Hi, All America. This is Grandma Sunshine's Bible Night, and tonight we are going to talk about Moses. Moses was a great man, and we are going to talk about how did Moses come about in the Bible. Well, once upon a time there was a very ancient land called Egypt, and in Egypt there was the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh, he was a very powerful king, and he decreed upon his people that there were these Israelites that were in his land, and he was very scared because he thought maybe they would take over Egypt, and he had to devise a plan what to do with these Israelites, the children of Jacob, who came down to Egypt because there was a famine in the land of Israel. So Jacob's children were the Israelites, the Jewish people, and they came down to Egypt and they wanted to go to see Joseph. Joseph was the son of Jacob that he had just got a little lost, and he ended up in Egypt. And he became the viceroy, means the second-hand person to Pharaoh. And now, when Joseph died, and the Pharaoh forgot who Joseph was, and that is when things all started to happen. And the Pharaoh decided that he is going to make a decree, and he is going to make all the Israelites slaves in the land of Egypt. And so it began a very hard time for the Israelites. And what happened was that the Israelites were praying to their God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God had listened to their prayers. And he had promised that he is going to take them out of this exile and back to the land of Israel with great miracles and wonders. And so they prayed very hard, and the Pharaoh of Egypt had these people that could see the future, and they saw that there is going to be a savior for the Israelites. So they decreed that every child, boy, will be thrown into the Nile. And one day, this lady, whose name was Yocheved, and some call her Shifra, she had a child, and that child was Moses. But they were scared that maybe the Egyptians, because of Pharaoh's decree, would take this Moses and it would kill him. So what Yocheved, the mother of Moses, Shifra, took him and put him in a basket into the Nile River, and made a little tiny boat and put little Moses inside the basket. And she sent her daughter Miriam, which was the sister of Moses, to watch over Moses and make sure nothing bad happens to him. So what happened was the basket flew down the river of the Nile in Egypt, and all of a sudden there was a bunch of beautiful women bathing in the Nile. And one of those beautiful women was the daughter of Pharaoh. Her name was Batia, and she saw this child crying, and she had to see, and she had a very kind heart, and she felt very bad for this child. And she said, this must be an Israelite child, a Jewish child, and she took him into the palace and adopted that child as her own. And Miriam came to her because the daughter of Pharaoh needed someone to nurse that child. And Miriam said, I know who the mother is. And Batia, the daughter of Pharaoh, said, I will hire your mother, Yocheved, Shifra, to take care of my son, who I will call Moses. So Moses grew up in the palace of the king of Egypt called the Pharaoh. And as Moses got bigger and he grew up, he became wanted to see where he came from, and he was so overtaken by the fact that his brothers and sisters became slaves in Egypt that he just had to run away. And he ran away so far that he met this beautiful family of Jethro. And Jethro had beautiful 7 daughters. And Jethro loved Moses so much that he let his daughter Zipporah marry Moses. And that is when everything started to happen. Moses one day was trying to go in the desert, and he was running after one of his sheep. And God made a miracle that sheep ran really fast all the way to the Mount of Sinai. And on the mountain of Sinai, there was a burning bush. But God made a miracle that an angel was in the shape of a fire. And the bush was not burning because the angel was the fire. And the bush did not burn. And God talked to Moses from that burning bush and told Moses that you must go down to Egypt and say to Pharaoh to let my people go. And God picked Moses as the leader of the Israelites, and Moses went down to Egypt and asked that Pharaoh let his people go. And in our next segment, we are going to talk about the great miracles that God had did to show Pharaoh that God is powerful. And because Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he didn't want to let the children of Israel leave. Thank you so much for listening about the story of Moses in the Bible. And God bless all of you. And may we only inspire everybody to be so wonderful people and kind people like Moses, who cared about his brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for listening to Grandma Sunshine's Bible Night.